Here it is, guys, the brand new updated lightning rod, lightning arrow, orb of storms, and you guys can see it is melting. What's up, Path of Exile Rangers and Deadeyes? Let's go over the brand new updated lightning arrow, lightning rod, lightning ranger build. So let's go first over the skills, we'll go over the gear, and go over some of the updates. So one of the most recent updates that we got in a patch was that the exposure does not have a negative penalty to the damage. So overall, that's a small little buff for us, but nothing got nerfed at all. So for starters, let's go over the skills that we use and how we actually use them. So lightning rod and orb of storms is basically our boss killer. Now for the trash killing, we could just use lightning arrow, but we can also mix in lightning rod. So if we see an elite pack, a lot of times I will just shoot down a couple lightning rods and follow up with some lightning arrows. But if I'm able to kill the things fast enough with just lightning arrow, because the clear speed on this skill is absolutely fantastic, I could just spam this. But for like the bosses where you get on the maps where it says that there's a powerful boss at the very end, then I can apply Voltaic Mark, then activate Lightning Rod and Orb of Storms if I really want to just melt the bosses, because some of the bosses in this game, they can take quite a long amount of time depending on your build, but this build will delete most of them really fast, and you can kind of essentially face tank them. And I know that some people may see the HP drop really low. For evasion based builds, sometimes if a boss or elite crits you, you will take a big chunk of damage, but that's okay. And the reason why is on the tree, we do get this thing over here that gives us increased evasion rating if you have been hit recently, which is 100%. So if we get hit, then we're gonna get a huge boost to survivability, which is kind of weird, but there's also this thing called blind that will also apply, and the blind can actually be applied with one of your buffs that you will have, and that blind will make it so the enemies are going to hit you essentially less because it reduces their accuracy. So there are two different things that kind of factor in that will actually make the enemies less likely to hit you again as a follow-up. So just keep that in mind. This is kind of normal for evasion-based builds with Path of Exile, so if your HP kind of like jumps, it's kind of like bouncing back and forth. I know it seems scary, but it's just kind of how the game works. Now, don't expect to go ahead and face tank multiple like red boss attacks, because those, well, you may actually have to dodge, but in majority of cases, you will melt a lot of the bosses before they can really do anything, which is awesome. So for starters, let's go over the skills and kind of how we use them with the gems. So Lightning Rod is kind of used to proc and give us a high value of shock, as well as give us our source of damage here for, again, bosses. So Lightning Rod over here, and then we are running Martial Tempo, we're running Concentrated Effect, we're running Rising Tempest, and Overcharge. So why did we drop Scatter Shot? Scatter Shot actually has a slower cast because it gives you a negative attack speed and negative damage, but you get more arrows, so you get basically kind of like more damage essentially. But then that will actually make your Orbs of Storms eat up faster. It's kind of up to you. If you want to play it over Martial Tempo, you can run both. Heck, I think they're both great. You can run Concentrated Effect, Rising Tempest. This gem right now will more than likely get nerfed. How it works is if you apply any other source of damage, like if I have Cold Fire, and I'm using lightning as our damage source, right? So it's going to automatically apply that lightning damage. It will just like work off of itself. It probably shouldn't do it. If this gets nerfed, run anything that's going to give you damage. Heck, just replace this with the Scatter Shot and you're going to be good to go. I kind of fully expect this thing to get nerfed. It's not like a crazy OP thing that's like making this build super good. This build, even before even running this even like in a 2-link, was just deleting bosses while I was doing the campaign. But if you do need like a campaign leveling build, I'll also link that down below, as this is kind of like our progression through the maps. Right now, this is what I'm going to consider kind of like the mid-tier of the maps, kind of like anywhere from like 6 to 10-ish for like the tiers of the map where this thing is going to destroy. I'm sure it's going to destroy in red maps too, but again, I kind of want to upload this as a progression guide. And then we are also running Overcharge, so it's going to give us more shock value. In PoE2, you can go over to the 50% without running like, I don't know, Elementalist or any of these other things that can give you like a higher number of shock, which is pretty cool. And then we are running Orb of Storms. This is important. You want to keep your Orb of Storms at very low level. Now, I only have a 3-link over here. Essentially, you can get or like 5-link here. But if you want to run Unleash, Chain, and Overabundance, that's great. If you want to add Lightning Exposure here, this would be a huge extra bonus source of DPS. Now remember, Orbs of Storm doesn't deal damage itself that matters. It's like 10 damage or whatever. It does not matter. You're utilizing it so it activates the Lightning Rod, so they're just going crazy. That's why you hear this like popcorn sound effect when you're just deleting stuff with this skill in combination with Lightning Rod. And then we have Lightning Arrow. Oh, also one thing to mention, you have to run Unleash and Overabundance. If you do not run those, then the skill performs a lot worse. The reason why is you'll see that I have like a number 2 above my skill that is Orb of Storms. And so what Unleash does, it charges up the skill, so when I push it once, it's going to use multiple of them all at once. Now visually, since they're stacked up on top of each other, unless you zoom in, you cannot really see that there's 2 orbs. But there is 2 orbs, it just kind of pops them all at once. And then with Chain and Overabundance, you have to have Overabundance to make Unleash actually worth it, because otherwise, without Overabundance, you're only limited to 1 Orb of Storm. And then Lightning Exposure is just going to apply the debuff on them, giving them negative resistances. And then for our Trash Killer, we were running Lightning Arrow. One newer addition that I really did like was adding in Fork. This makes our clear speed just phenomenal. You can see in this map, because the other map was like really tight corridors, right? But like in this like giant open map, oh man, this thing is just fantastic. And then we've got Lightning Infusion for more damage, Long Shot for more damage. Again, this is mainly for killing trash, but you can swap Long Shot if you really want to. It's just on the Ascendancy, you can either run Far Shot or Point Blank, doesn't really matter, but I just opt to run this because it has technically the highest like chance at dealing damage. We're off-screening enemies quite frequently in this build, so I liked this, but you can run whatever. And then Primal Armament, definitely, because it's an elemental build, so Primal Armament is excellent as well. And then Voltaic Mark, I only activate this during like the bosses or very specific elites that have just crazy amounts of HP, but again, when I'm saying crazy amounts of HP, it's just I see the monster and it may take, instead of like 2 seconds, it may take 3. Like, this thing just is fantastic for bossing. And then we run Persistence, so it lasts longer. Most of the time, though, you really don't need it. You can drop both of these if you want. Heighten Curses is definitely better than Persistence, but it will require an additional 5 int, whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. But it's just applying. What this does is it facilitates our build not needing to run Conductivity. Conductivity was great and it gives you a lot more damage. However, the int requirement is really, really high. So I decided to make this extra beginner friendly for you guys and make it so we just drop that completely, because it does have kind of a clunky animation in PoE 2 versus PoE 1. You curse something, it just curses it. In PoE 2, it's like you curse it, then it like puts it on the ground and it takes a second and then it like curses everything. Voltaic Mark is arguably worse against like a pack of elites. But against like a single target, Voltaic Mark is excellent because it's one target, right? But again, Conductivity is still great. If you want to add it into the build, by all means go for it. It's going to give you a lot more int requirements, but it will give you technically way more damage. And then for our buffs, we run Wind Dancer as well as Herald of Thunder. We do not run any cast on whatever because, well, that got nerfed pretty bad. So for Wind Dancer, what we do play is Maim, and we run Blind. So when enemies hit us, they're going to be maimed, which slows them down, and they're going to be blinded, so they're going to have a less chance to kind of follow up with another hit. And then what this does, by the way, it reduces accuracy rating. And then we have Herald of Thunder. It also technically makes them easier to hit too. But we also run Herald of Thunder with Innervate, so when we kill monsters, we can get a bonus on our lightning damage. And then we run Cannibalism. This is how I recover HP really fast. I love this. Excellent, excellent thing to run. And then we also run Clarity for more mana regen. As you start leveling up and you get more like links, the mana gets crazy. And I was really trying to solve mana, and I did put this little thing over here. If you want to solve mana, these are some excellent ways to solve it. You can get mana kill on your bow, you can get mana regen on your ring, amulet, you can get physical leech, which technically only works with lightning arrow because lightning rod converts 100% physical to lightning. And then you can also get mana percent on kill on a tree with Anoint with Siphon. If you guys don't know what Anoint is, I'll make a dedicated video that goes over like key stuff for Path of Exile, and basically it lets you get anything on your tree without even having it to be connected. So basically we're going to be getting this thing over here. Otherwise we have to spend several points to get to it, and we only really want this recover 2% mana on kill, so we're going to get this without even pathing towards it. It's just in the builder, I don't think you can actually put that in. But you can also get Inspiration as a gem. It will lower your damage because it doesn't give you any multipliers. Like in PoE 1, this used to give you crit, LA damage, but it doesn't work like that in PoE 2. It just gives you less mana, like it's a negative mana multiplier, which is good. But as far as it goes, that is going to be our skills and gems. And now let's move into our gear. So the gear is pretty much going to be the same that we've seen before in like my previous iterations. We're looking for dual string bow with bow attacks via additional arrows. We're looking for a level of projectile skill gems, attack speed, increased lightning, physical damage. One thing to note is getting percent elemental damage only affects the local stats in PoE 2, which makes it worse. So ideally you don't get percent increased elemental because it only works off of that lightning, which is low anyways. So that's why you see a lot of people put runes for physical in the top tier bows. And then as far as our helmet goes, we want as much life we can go for as much evasion as well as just getting a bunch of different resistances here. That's kind of the key. And then for our quiver, I personally really like the prime quiver because it has an implicit for increased attack speed. Then we're getting physical damage, lightning damage, physical damage, as well as getting a level of all projectile skills. We can also go for more attack speed, dexterity. These are all great stats to go for. And then for our rings, we're looking for a bunch of resistances, life, and then if we need to get those stats, if you need like the extra int here, this is an area where you can get your stats, your all attributes, intelligence. Strength is arguably one of the best, like just like extra stats that you can go for because it does give you life. And then you can also get chaos res, you can also get mana regen. Those are great things to go ahead and shoot for in both of the rings. They're kind of the same. If you want to really try to cap out on your chaos res to get more survivability, you definitely want to try to get an amethyst ring. Chaos resistance in this game is just, it's kind of mean, to be honest. Like they give you not only a lot less value, but it's just like a hard roll to get. I'm sure the weight is probably a lot less, but getting all attributes, again, mana regen, these are all like great things. And then for our gloves, ideally prioritizing getting attack speed. You can also get physical attack damage leeches mana, getting some resistances, again, chaos res. It doesn't mean on the gloves you need chaos res, but like get chaos res, lightning res, fire res, kind of wherever. As far as the belt goes, I still really like this belt. I think it's arguably one of the best like bases in the game. It's called a plate belt. It just gives us some small amount of armor. Getting strength on belt is pretty good because it gives you life, and it's just an extra stat for life. But getting a bunch of different resistances on the belt is kind of good too. And then what we're looking for on the boots, just get as much movement speed as possible, max life, high evasion, again, then resistances. It's kind of like the same thing time and time again. The flask, there's not really anything that's important other than the instant recovery, like a percent of it applied instantly. It used to be called seething in PoE 1, same thing. For the charm, since you really don't get that many charm slots, if you do get like multiple charm slots, this is what I would recommend. Definitely being immune to freeze is good, but being immune to shock, stun, those are kind of the ones that shocked definitely can become pretty nasty because if you get like the shocked round mod and then you get stunned or something, you're probably ripping, especially if you're playing the evade-based build and you maybe take a big crit. The flask, I feel like it doesn't really matter. I was trying out different mana flasks, like the ones that recharge every 0.2 seconds, you gain a charge, but because it requires so many charges, you get like reduced flash charges, increased charges. Mana in this game, it genuinely is kind of just a mean stat to go ahead and have people go for because the mana cost is just really high in general, especially when you start ranking up the skills, but then you don't have the minus mana cost to rings like you would in PoE 1. So, yeah, mana is just something that is kind of difficult. That's why I recommend anointing that siphon, and it does make the build way smoother. Now, as far as the tree over here, we want to just go straight into the projectiles. You can get point blank or you can get far shot. Point blank will be better for bossing, and then far shot, again, if you're just kind of mobbing and killing a bunch of the trash, far shot is better. You can swap either one of these, totally fine. And then for your third one, get gathering winds, and then eventually we will want to get wind ward, so we take less damage over here. As far as the tree goes, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you guys can actually see it, because I know it's kind of small sometimes to see here. What we're trying to go for, in the most part, is just getting all like these damage nodes over here. Getting projectile damage is kind of key. Getting this additional bonuses from quiver. Eventually, we will take these other nodes, but I kind of want this to be a progression, so I didn't like use every single point. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much content here, because I know Path of Exile, it is an overwhelming game, but getting all of these nodes is great. All the lightning stuff, we get extra evasion, extra movement speed. And then what we're going to try to do, like if you're watching this, I would recommend you guys to watch like the very first video of this, because it's like the later stages of the progression. But getting this is going to be like your big damage node here. It makes it so your lightning hits roll 2 times and it takes the best results on non-crits. So getting this is kind of like your big damage node over here. And because PoE doesn't have any like life on the tree, you can technically go for strength, that will give you some HP. But for the most part, the game isn't really designed like that. So getting this is key and critical. And then like the other big node over here is bestial skin, so this doubles our evasion rating from body armor. And then also once we have like a pretty good amount, at least like 50 to 60% of your evasion rate after you select this node, is when this node actually becomes useful. Then there's also this nice little 50% increase damage with lightning that you can take over here. I like this one, and it's like right next to the acrobatics anyways. There's actually a cool thing called skill speed, which increases, it's basically like action speed in PoE 1, so this is like a great thing to grab. And then we get increased movement speed, which is kind of like a premium stat in PoE too. They're stingy with the movement speed, I've noticed with this game. They want the game to be slower, I get it. But I really like getting this. This is great. And this is absolutely amazing, being able to maim. So this is like offensive and defensive stats. And as I started progressing, I ended up dropping this area over here because like iron reflexes doesn't work with a double evasion like on your body armor. So this is something I will consider getting later as if I get good enough gear to have a lot more strength. But right now there's a lot of pressure to get resistances. So if you want to though, you could convert everything to armor just so you have more consistency and you don't just take big chunks of damage. But it's just kind of the nature of evasion based builds here. You could also get this. It'll give you, I don't know, maybe like 10% towards the later stages of the game. But if you also take acrobatics, which is something that we've added in to the build over here, which lets us evade all of the different hits, which is excellent. It gives you a lot of survivability. It is random though, but it is still worth taking in my personal opinion. And a lot of other builds are running it as well. It's just RNG. But you could also get this and it will still give you some physical damage reduction. Plus there is some evasion nodes over here and it does progress the tree if you want to grab some other stuff later. And there's this area over here if you do want even more damage versus like elites. These are like some great nodes for damage as well. But this one over here, there's another node where it gives you evasion rating per armor. So if you, again, you get a really good belt that has strength because you'd want that because it does give you extra HP. And if you have extra points later as you've already got the requirements for like your dex and your int, then you can actually get enough strength to equip some gloves that perhaps will give you a decent amount of armor, and then maybe you can look at towards like 15% damage reduction from physical. And it may not sound like it's a lot because you're not only based off of armor. Remember, you have a lot of evasion, but it will kind of mitigate some of like the bigger damage. But you will need to get something that has you know, a good base for whatever glove that you're working on, and then you can again get a little bit armor. Maybe you can run a hybrid in a couple different pieces, but your chest piece must be all evasion. Ideally, you run the studded variant like we show off over here. The expert studded vest, it does require you to be level 70, but it will give you the most bang for your buck. There's also one, I believe it's called like Dragon Scale, which gives you like ailment, like threshold. It's another good one. It has a little bit less evasion on the base, but still a pretty good option. But that's what the tree looks like as far as right now. Then we unspec'd out of some of these like other movement speed ones, as you can get jewels with movement speed, and there's like a little bit of movement speed right here. It's just, again, movement speed is actually a really good thing in Path of Exile 2. It will definitely help you out with clear speed, and your survivability actually goes up quite a bit, because sometimes when there's a monster like boss attack, instead of actually doing a dodge roll, you can actually be shooting the whole time, which essentially increases your DPS, right? So keep that in mind as well with the build. But anyways, everything will be linked down below in case you guys want to watch the first step of the build or the later stages of the build. But anyways, that's gonna wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell if you guys want to see an update to this in the future, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.